Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, it's Maddie here, and a ton of the new Space-Time Smackdown cards have kind of been leaked on Twitter earlier today. This is something that I wasn't necessarily going to make a video on because I wasn't sure if these were real or not. However, I've waited some time and nobody's really disputed the fact that these cards are real and they look very convincing. So it's basically all but a certainty that these are basically new cards that we will be getting in Space-Time Smackdown, which is set to release in just a couple of days. And some of these cards look absolutely ridiculous. Let's go over all of these different cards. We're going to talk about how good they are, how we're going to be able to use these cards, what the meta is going to look like, decks that we can build. Yeah, we're going to get right into it. Basically, preemptive rankings, or not necessarily rankings, but strategy talk and metagame analysis of a lot of these new cards. So let's get right into it, guys. Before we get into these cards, though, I want to plug the Discord server. Link for it will be down in the description below. We just recently started it, but it's a great place to hang out, talk about different deck lists and strategies, while also finding trade partners when trading is released tomorrow to Pokemon TCG Pocket. So definitely go check out the Discord server. Okay, let's get into these cards. So there's literally a ton. I don't know exactly how many of these are. I didn't count. But all of these cards that I'm showing here on screen are new cards that are basically confirmed, I would say, almostly confirmed at this point, to be coming to Space-Time Smackdown in a couple of days. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at the new trainer cards that were announced, because for the most part, I think that looking at the trainer cards first is going to provide us with a lot of context so that we can look at the Pokemon after that. So the first trainer card we're going to take a look at here is Cyrus. So Cyrus is very similar to Sabrina or Boss's Orders from the official card game, and it reads that switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage on it into the active spot. So similar to Sabrina, this is what we call a gust card, being able to move Pokemon from our opponent's bench into their active spot. Now, what we don't have in Pokemon Pocket right now is targeted gust. Technically we do, it's on Victory Bell. That's the only card that has targeted gust, meaning that the primary gust card that we have right now is Sabrina, that came out in Genetic Apex, which doesn't specify. It basically forces our opponent to swap their Pokemon, but they get to pick which bench Pokemon moves into the active spot. And that is actually one of the most meta-defining cards in the entire game right now. So Cyrus is a little bit of another flavor to that. It's a little bit more situational. However, it is stronger technically because we get to choose, even though the scenario in which we're going to be able to use this card is a little bit more limited than Sabrina, which we can use at any point. But yeah, very, very good. So what's interesting here is that the bench Pokemon needs to have damage onto it for us to even be able to use this card. So it makes it not only situational, but basically, if our opponent's bench Pokemon doesn't have any damage onto it, this card is basically useless. So I would think that Cyrus is going to be not only really, really good just in general, because there are a lot of scenarios where your opponent maybe, retreats their active Pokemon that has some damage attached to it to go into their attacking Pokemon. And then basically now Cyrus, what that allows us to do is to bring that damaged Pokemon back up into the active spot at some point later in the game to finish up a KO on it. So I think Cyrus is going to be useful in basically all decks, even though it is a little bit situational. However, any decks where basically bench damaging Pokemon or spread Pokemon are relevant rather in your deck, if you're running a deck that does that, Cyrus is going to be phenomenal. Things like Articuno, things like Hitmonlee that does bench damage, or Pikachu and Substrika that does bench damage. Any cards like that, this card is going to be absolutely phenomenal on, because we get to basically pick and choose which Pokemon we want to target, not only for damage on our opponent's bench, but also which Pokemon we would rather also want to bring up into the active spot with Cyrus. So this card is absolutely fundamentally really, really strong. Now, it's not pure targeted gust. Things like Boss's Orders has no limitations, and that's in the official card game, but it's also one of the best cards to ever be printed for the official Pokemon TCG. So this is really, really interesting. It's another form of gust that we have in the format right now. It's going to make certain decks that much better. Again, it could be really, really useful in decks that do spread damage, but also decks that do bench damage and focus on kind of whittling down bench Pokemon. So I really like Cyrus. I think it's really good, and it's going to be, again, I think going to make spread decks or bench damaging decks a little bit more consistent. So next up, let's take a look at Volkner. This is actually the full art version, but there is, again, going to be a standard version of this card. But this card reads that it's a supporter card, rather. It reads that choose one of your Electivire or Luxray Pokemon and attach 2 energy cards from your discard pile to that Pokemon, 2 lightning energies. So this is really, really interesting, because actually when I first saw this card and I saw the leaks come out, my first impression was that they're probably not real, that they weren't real leaks. And this card was actually the main reason why I actually thought that. Mainly because this is the first instance of any card really interacting with our discard pile. And I just didn't think that we would necessarily get a card like this, because this isn't the official Pokemon TCG where the energy cards are like actual cards we run in our deck and we can discard them from our hand. In the official Pokemon TCG, there's a lot of bench interaction or rather discard interaction. And your discard pile really acts almost like your second deck, whereas in Pocket, it doesn't necessarily work that way. However, yes, technically we do have Pokemon that discard electric energies pretty effectively. Raichu does that as an example. Also, like when you get KO'd, the energies that you attach to your Pokemon do go into the discard pile if you didn't already know that. But also, if you spend energy to retreat, they also go into the discard pile. So this card does effectively make sense. I thought it was a little bit suspect when it first came out, but no, I think these cards are particularly actually real inclusions. So this card is really interesting. So we're going to take a look at Electivire and Luxray after this, but basically it's a really effective energy acceleration card. And it doesn't, your Pokemon doesn't have any limitations to whether it's in the active spot or not, like Lieutenant Surge. So it's a little bit less limiting than Lieutenant Surge, but again, more of a late game option. We'll have to see if there's some effective way to get electric energies in our discard pile, or rather new ways to do that. Yes, we do have Raichu and certain things like that, but very interesting card. So later down the line, we'll take a look at Electivire. I don't think that Luxray has been shown or leaked yet. So overall, we'll have to see, but I think that 2 energies in 1 turn from a supporter card can be really, really strong. We'll just, I guess, have to check and see how situational that situation is to have, 2 electric energies in our discard pile. But again, our Electivire or Luxray can be either on the bench or in the active position, so pretty flexible in its usage. So I think it could be really, really good. We'll have to take a look rather at, what the Electivire and Luxray cards look like. We do have Electivire somewhere down here, so we'll save that for later. But so let's skip ahead to the other trainer cards. This is the normal art version of Cynthia. We did already see Cynthia, however, now it is confirmed that this damage buff to Garchomp and Togekiss. Can I zoom in a little bit? We're going to actually zoom. That way it's a bit better. Now it is confirmed that the damage buff that we're giving to Garchomp or Togekiss is only to our opponent's active Pokemon, and we do have Garchomp and Togekiss leaked here in this collection of cards that we have been shown. So we're going to be able to analyze Cynthia a little bit more effectively, but that is just the normal art version of Cynthia. Okay, now I got to zoom back out. I zoomed in too much. So let's go down a little bit more and let's take a look at the tool cards. So 3 new tool cards have been shown in this leak. They've been basically announced for the new expansion. We don't know if that's all of the tool cards we're going to be getting in Space-Time Smackdown. However, we have 3 at least, so that is kind of as much or the most I thought we would get, but we might get more tool cards. We'll have to see. And they are very generic. This is the first one. It's going to be Rocky Helmet. I'll explain a little bit for people that don't necessarily know what tool cards are because they are new to Pokemon Pocket. These are like trainer cards that, similar to energy, you attach them to your Pokemon and they provide a permanent buff effect until that Pokemon either gets KO'd or if the item or tool card gets discarded by any, effect that might happen. But yeah, they're very interesting. I wasn't actually, I really didn't think we were going to get tool cards or anything like this in Pocket until that Pachirisu EX got announced. But yeah, very interesting. So we have 3 new tool cards, at least that have been confirmed for Space-Time Smackdown, and this is the first one, and this reads Rocky Helmet. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot and it is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, do 20 damage to the attacking Pokemon. So this card is actually a lot better in Pokemon Pocket, I think, than it is in the official card game, mainly because the games are so much quicker, but also the Pokemon have such less HP, the numbers aren't as blown up. Like 20 damage is actually extremely significant a lot of times in Pokemon Pocket, especially when you're attaching this to a Pokemon that's going to have to get attacked 2 or 3 times even to get KO'd. So I think that this is actually a really important card. The first thing that a lot of people probably thought of was Druddigon with the Rough Skin ability. Yes, you can attach Rocky Helmet to Druddigon, and every time your opponent attacks it in the active spot, they're going to take 40 damage, which again, 40 damage in Pokemon Pocket is very substantial. That is a lot of damage. So Rocky Helmet, really, really cool, but I actually think it's going to be better in so many different scenarios than people might assume it's going to be, just because 20 damage is 20 damage. Like, no matter what, it's basically like, you got to think about it like your opponent is probably going to attack you to win the game. Because again, there's no targeted gust, so they can't really just avoid attacking your active Pokemon. So if you slap Rocky Helmet on the active Pokemon, like, they're just going to take damage. That could either be 20, 40, maybe 60 damage because of Rocky Helmet, unless, again, it gets discarded. We don't actually, nothing's been shown yet that has an effect, whether it's a tool card, supporter card, whatever, that's able to discard tool cards from your Pokemon. So for all we know right now, tool cards are staying until your Pokemon gets KO'd, which makes them, again, that much better. But yeah, Rocky Helmet, it's not very situational. This card is just in general really strong, and I think that you can play this in almost any deck, and it's going to be an extra damage modifier, almost more effective than any other damage modifier that we have in the game right now. 20 damage per time you get attacked is a lot. It's going to add up, especially against tankier Pokemon, but even in less tanky Pokemon that maybe just do a little bit less damage than you want them to, you can force your opponent to hit you basically and take that extra 20 damage. Now, one thing to note is that even if you get KO'd, or if the Pokemon that your opponent is attacking gets KO'd and it has Rocky Helmet attached to it, the effect still applies. So even if your Pokemon gets knocked out, if it has Rocky Helmet attached, you do still do that 20 damage. The one thing that we're going to see a lot more often with Rocky Helmet is games ending in a tie, because if you're taking the last KO to win the game, but your opponent has Rocky Helmet and it KOs your active Pokemon, they both technically get KO'd and your game will end in a tie. Nobody's actually going to win. I believe that's the ruling, and that's typically how it works in Pokemon TCG, but we'll have to see. But yes, even if you get KO'd, this effect does still apply. But yeah, Rocky Helmet is a lot better, I think, than a lot of people give it credit for. In my opinion, I think it's going to be absolutely extremely influential. More so, at least, than the next tool card, which is Lumberry, which reads, at the end of the turn, if this Pokemon this card is attached to is affected by any special conditions, it recovers from all of them or any of them, and then you discard this card. So it's a single-use Pokemon tool card. But it will, again, save you from being afflicted by a status condition. Now, status conditions aren't necessarily at the top of the metagame right now in Pokemon Pocket. It's not something that I think could be, or I guess it could be pretty relevant. We'll have to see if maybe status condition decks become like top tier. This could be really useful in countering those particular cards. But overall, at least at the moment, I don't think this is going to be that relevant. Again, it's going to be kind of situational. Again, it just depends on what the meta turns into. If status condition decks aren't meta, then this card is not going to see play. But it's nice at least to have an option to counter some decks that could be really strong that also rely on status conditions. So yeah, this is the other Pokemon tool card. And the other one that I think probably most people are really excited for is Giant Cape. And this simply reads that the Pokemon this card is attached to gets 20 more HP. Now, this is really, really, really strong. Again, Pokemon Pocket is interesting because the games don't last very long. So in situations where your Pokemon can live an extra attack that it otherwise wouldn't be able to, that is a massive advantage and can oftentimes be the difference between you winning a game and losing a game. And yes, we do have Potion, the item card in the game, but Giant Cape and getting 20 more HP is actually a lot different in a lot of scenarios, even a lot better than healing 20 HP from your Pokemon that already has damage onto it. The reason for that is because, again, Giant Cape could allow us in certain scenarios to live an attack otherwise that we would get knocked out in one hit. I think that 150 is kind of the sweet spot number right now for damage and HP in the game. A lot of Pokemon are going to be doing around 150 HP, 140, 150, maybe even like 160 or so. So if we have Giant Cape attached to a Pokemon that has 140 HP or 150 HP, that's going to put them at 160 or 170 HP, which is just out of range of kind of that sweet spot number that a lot of Pokemon like to hit with. And basically being able to live an additional turn is just better than, I guess, being able to heal 20 damage in a scenario when we would have been getting one hit KO'd anyway. So Giant Cape is extremely good. And again, there's a lot of Pokemon right now in the set, as we'll see, that do about 140, 150 damage and have about 150 or less HP. So this basically is going to be really useful. We'll have to kind of see how the meta evolves, what the most common decks are. For example, right now, a deck like Gyarados EX is really, really popular, or Mewtwo, I guess, would be a better example. And that deck really just does 150 damage. So in the mirror matchup, people are running blue to reduce the damage that Mewtwo does to them so that we can live a hit. Giant Cape is really just going to help us in scenarios like that. So it really depends on kind of what decks are prominent in the metagame or what decks are maybe strong against your deck. There are specific scenarios where plus 20 HP could be extremely useful. There are scenarios where it's just not going to be useful at all. So it's going to be a little bit matchup dependent. But overall, this card is going to be really, really strong. Again, when my previous video talking about Dialga EX, basically anything that allows Dialga to stick around for longer is going to make this card exceptionally much, much better. So Giant Cape could bring Dialga up to 170 HP. We do have Potion. We do have Blue as well. These are all things that can help Dialga stay around for longer, which, again, we get more value out of the Metallic Turbo. And again, Palkia is a great example of this. Dimensional Storm does 150 damage. And again, both Dialga and Palkia have 150 HP. So this is Giant Cape is going to allow these Pokemon to live attacks that they otherwise wouldn't. And I think that's going to be kind of the number one scenario where these Giant Cape or this particular tool card comes in handy. So that's all the trainer cards, the new trainer cards rather, that have been leaked. I am talking so fast in this video, but I need to get this all in. I can't be talking for like 3 hours, so we're talking quickly, and I apologize if it's hard to follow. But okay, So let's skip down and let's just start looking at the new Pokemon cards. So let's start off with Bidoof here, or Bidoof, however you pronounce it, or however you like to pronounce Bidoof. This card is actually crazy. So we don't have a Bibarel, that's the evolved form of Bidoof rather. It hasn't been showcased yet, but yes, we will be getting a Bibarel. It could be an EX, it could be not an EX, who knows. This is a colorless Pokemon, but Bibarel could be a water type Pokemon. We'll have to see. It's probably going to be normal as well, but Bidoof, 60 HP basic Pokemon, retreat cost of 2, weak to fighting. It has the Super Fang attack for 2 colorless energies, half your opponent's active Pokemon's remaining HP rounded down. So this is crazy. So like in a scenario where our opponent has 150 HP, basically, because it's only in like segments of 10, is how we do it in Pocket. If we use Super Fang on a Mewtwo EX, it goes down to 70 HP, which is really, really strong. Now, it might be difficult to get 2 energies onto a Bibarel, like on a Bidoof rather. So I don't know, like I don't think this card is going to necessarily be like teched into decks and used, but I mean, I guess it could be, but it's just really interesting to note that this is an attack that could be exceptionally really strong. It's kind of broken, but again, 60 HP basic, 2 colorless energies. It's just, I don't think it's something that we would like play in most decks, but if we were playing a Bidoof or a Bibarel deck, this could be really useful. So interesting to note. We also do have some ways to accelerate energies to colorless Pokemon in this format. Dialga is one of them. We'll see another one coming up, but yeah, Bidoof is really interesting. We don't have a Bibarel yet, but either way, very strong attack for an otherwise like interesting, non like strong typical Pokemon. Super Fang, very interesting. Now this is the Riolu that evolves into the Lucario that we saw in the previous leak video, which I should mention if you haven't seen my previous video talking about the all of the cards that were officially announced in the trailer a couple days ago. Go check out that video. We're not going to talk about those cards. That's why I haven't talked about these ones at the top. We already covered these in the previous video. Go check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, nothing really to say about Riolu here, or Riolu. I don't know. The pronouncements are weird. 60 HP fighting type, retreat cost of 1. We can attack for 20 damage for 1 energy. So if we are playing Lucario, technically we can attack on curve with Riolu. So that's something to note. Next, let's get into something very, very interesting here, which is Weavile EX. And this is the first Dark type EX Pokemon we have ever seen announced for Pokemon TCG Pocket, and it is very, very interesting. So it's a Stage 1 Pokemon. It evolves from Sneasel. We haven't seen Sneasel yet. 140 HP for a Stage 1 Pokemon, so not great, but not terrible. Again, less HP than like Dialga and Palkia, but 140 is not bad. Again, with Giant Cape, we go up to 160. We're pretty safe from getting KO'd in a lot of scenarios there, but the attack here, Scratching Nails. We have a retreat cost of 1, weak to Grass, by the way. I would have liked to see Weavile have a free retreat cost. It's one of the fastest Pokemon in all of Pokemon. But retreat cost of 1 is fine, I suppose. And the attack here, Scratching Nails, does 30 damage for 1 dark type energy. And if your opponent's active Pokemon has any damage on it, this attack does 40 more damage. So not a tremendous amount of damage for 1 energy. We can do 70 damage on a Stage 1 Pokemon. Now, typically with Stage 1 Pokemon that have 1 attack cost, 1 energy in their attack cost, these are cards that we like to play aggressively and really fast-paced in, aggro type decks. However, Weavile, unless there's a way for us to somehow get at least 1 damage counter or at least 10 damage on our opponent's active Pokemon on our either first or second turn, then without attacking that is, then Weavile really does feel a little bit underwhelming. Now, if there is a card, let's say like, for example, let's say that there's a Spiritomb card, not an EX, but just Spiritomb, and it's a dark type basic Pokemon, and it has an effect that says like once per turn, you can put, 10 damage on one of your opponent's Pokemon. A card like that, just as an example, would make Weavile EX potentially the strongest card in the game. So this card has so much potential from an aggressive standpoint that, like I said, if there's a way for us to get damage on our opponent's active Pokemon on our first or second turn without having to attack by either a Pokemon effect or some sort of an effect here, then Weavile EX could literally be one of the strongest Pokemon and strongest decks in the entire game, because that would allow us to hit for 70 damage on a Stage 1 EX 140 HP Pokemon on our second turn if we are going first. And that's one of the big upsides to, Stage 1 Pokemon with 1 energy in their attack cost. We've seen this a lot of times. Things like Primeape in this current format, the one from Mythical Island, Exeggutor EX is a really big one, how good these cards are, because if you do go first, there's a lot of Pokemon in the game that aren't really strong when you go first, but if you're a Stage 1 Pokemon and you have only 1 energy in your attack cost, that means you can evolve before your opponent, meaning on your second turn going first, we can evolve and then just attach that 1 energy and attack. That's why Exeggutor is so strong a lot of times. That's why Weezing's good. That's why Primeape's good, and a few other cards as well. So Weavile has that pace potential, but like I said, just doing 30 damage the first time we attack really isn't that good, and then on the following turn doing 70 damage, again, not that good. especially since we don't have a tremendous amount of HP. So it would be fine, but it wouldn't really be that good. That's basically 100 total damage by our third turn, which isn't necessarily like something that we want. However, like I said, if we are able to do that full 70 damage the first time we attack with Weavile, this card could be absolutely incredibly strong. It could be one of the best aggressive decks in the entire game. So we'll have to see. Weavile, very, very interesting. Nothing's been kind of confirmed yet in terms of support for that particular Scratching Nails attack effect. This is the full art version of it. A really, really cool looking card as well. But yeah, Weavile, interesting. It could be kind of mid. It could be okay. Again, it's a low impact card. We only have to run 4 of them in our deck because it's a stage 1 Pokemon. So 4 total Pokemon to set up Weavile. It only takes 1 energy as well, so we got to keep that in mind. But overall, unless there's something that enables the pace to go absolutely crazy with Weavile, I think it's going to be a pretty average card. So we'll have to see. We don't necessarily know. Let's take a look at this holographic Darkrai EX. 110 HP basic, and we have the Dark Void attack, only 60 damage. Retreat cost of 2, by the way, weak to grass, which is interesting. But Dark Void, your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. We don't have to flip any coins for that effect, but 60 damage. Now, this is interesting. We don't have any way currently to accelerate Dark type energies. This is a basic Pokemon with 110 HP, so technically, like, this card could be relevant. It could see play, but at the moment, at least right now, there's not anything confirmed in terms of dark type energy acceleration, so we'll have to kind of see, how this card turns out. But very interesting nonetheless, this Darkrai card. We could get a Darkrai EX as well. Who knows? It hasn't been confirmed, but this is Darkrai. The art looks great, but yeah, I don't know. Given the context, this card probably won't see that much play. 3 energies, kind of steep. We might get some dark type energy acceleration. We will have to see. Next up, let's take a look at Gallade EX. So yes, Gallade did come out in Generation 4. I actually forgot about that. And yes, we do already have Gardevoir, and we do already have a Ralts and Kirlia cards, but there are some new ones that we'll show here. This is a fighting type Pokemon. Instead of Psychic, Gardevoir Psychic, Gallade fighting. Technically, Gallade is fighting in Psychic, but in the TCG, it's fighting type. 170 HP, Stage 2 Pokemon, weak to Psychic, even though we're a Psychic type. Partial Psychic type. Retreat cost of 1, and we have Energized Blade. This is like Psychic, that we've seen this effect, or this type of attack numerous times now. 2 fighting energies does 70 damage, plus if this attack does 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So attacks like this are pretty strong. Technically, we could be consistently doing 90 or 110 damage. Some scenarios getting up to 130 or 150. Here's the thing with Gallade. Yes, we have 170 HP, but we're weak to Psychic. Like Mewtwo EX does exist. Like, we can't pretend like this card has like a great position in the metagame right now. It's also a stage 2 Pokemon. It doesn't take a lot of energies to attack, but again, it's going to be kind of a slow build up. We have to evolve into the Gallade. It's consistent damage. It's easy to set up, but it doesn't have big one-hit KO potential. This card is interesting to me. I don't think it's bad, but again, I just think the way that the format's wrapped up right now, yes, we do have a giant cape, so we could go to 190 HP, but being weak to Psychic isn't really great in this format right now, especially being a stage 2 Pokemon with 170 HP. Like I said, without the tool card, we are in range of just getting one-hit KO'd by a Mewtwo EX, and we can't even KO it back because a lot of Pokemon are strong attacking Pokemon that are probably going to be pretty prominent in the format right now. Discard energies after they attack. So this effect can be strong. This card in general seems a little bit undertuned to me, but it is pretty consistent and it does have really good potential. So I do like Gallade. I just don't know if it's going to really be like, amongst the best cards in the format. Yes, we have Lucario, so we can pair Gallade EX with the new Lucario, and this Energized Blade attack could do, pretty decent damage. Like, if we have 1 or 2 Lucarios on our bench, yes, technically this attack can one-hit KO a lot of Pokemon in the game, but that requires quite a bit of setup, like I said, so we'll have to see. I think that, fighting type cards really do the best right now, being kind of fast-paced and aggressive. So maybe a mid-range, late game kind of sweeping Gallade deck could be prominent in the format, but we'll have to see. It's interesting. I don't think this card is like super overpowered in my opinion, but it is, I think, pretty decent. Again, we'll have to see. There might be better options, but Gallade EX, very interesting. This is Gabite, so we did see Gible. It got confirmed that Gible's attack, by the way, if we go up, can we scroll? Gible's attack does 20 damage for 1 colorless. Gabite here, as we see, Garchomp is going to have a water and fighting type attack cost. This is pretty standard for Garchomp Pokemon cards, but we can attack on curve with Gible and Gabite. 2 energies, we do slash 60 damage, 90 HP for a stage 1 Pokemon, so nothing too crazy there. And we do also have Garchomp, which I guess we'll just go down and take a look at immediately so that we're doing things in order. So this is the new Garchomp card. It's not an EX card. Now, we could also get a Garchomp EX. There's nothing that says that we couldn't, but for right now, this is the only Garchomp that we have announced right now. 140 HP. Stage 2, retreat cost of 1, no weakness, which is pretty cool. So this is interesting. It's a very interesting card. This ability, Reckless Shearing, you must discard a card from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. So this is an interesting effect. Like on paper, it seems exceptionally strong, but what you have to realize is that it's probably going to be 3 or 4 turns until we evolve into our Garchomp. By then, we've probably moved through half of our deck. Pokemon Pocket as well, like you only run 20 cards in your deck and most of them are all really useful. So discarding a card from your hand in Pokemon Pocket is different than the official card game. And most of the time, it feels a lot bad. Like it feels a much more worse to discard a card in your hand because yes, we are going through our deck and we're drawing a card and there are some scenarios where, of course, this effect could be worth using. But overall, I think that most decks aren't going to be running a lot of cards that they would love to just discard. So Garchomp is interesting. We're only doing 100 damage for 2 energy, so it is a decent option at least here. But I don't know, like draw effects like this that take 3, 4, maybe even 5 turns to even get into play are kind of interesting. I'm not super high on this Garchomp card. Again, it could get some support. We do have Sabrina, so we are able to hit for 150 damage for 2 energies. That is, again, kind of a sweet spot number, even though Giant Cape does exist. So I don't think Garchomp is bad, but I don't like see a world where like this card, is really worth running. Because you got to think we're running 6 Pokemon in our deck to get to this Pokemon. Like, that's what you got to think about. And, like, what is this card doing? Like, yes, technically, sometimes we're taking a KO. But overall, like, I don't know. I'm not, again, super high on Garchomp. I don't think it's a bad card, but I was kind of expecting more from Garchomp, if I'm being entirely honest with you. I could be just disrespecting this card entirely. Maybe the Reckless Shearing effect is really good. But again, like, we don't have energy cards in our deck. Like, there's no synergy for discarding cards, at least at the moment right now. Because, like, we're not really pulling any Pokemon out of the discard pile or trainer cards or anything like that. If that was a scenario, like if we had cards that were strong like that, then maybe that's the case. Like, but at least at the moment, we don't have any support for like pulling Pokemon or things back out of our discard pile. So discarding a card from our hand to draw 1 card is fine in Pocket, but like, I don't know. I think we would rather not discard a card in our hand because it's probably pretty useful. We probably aren't going to just be piling up a bunch of cards in our hand that we want to discard. Maybe extra Gible, Gabite, and Garchomps. Maybe that's what we want to discard. So maybe it could be useful. But I don't know. The upside here just doesn't seem too tremendous. But that is Garchomp. Very interesting nonetheless. Yeah, maybe I'm disrespecting it. I don't know. 150 HP or damage is pretty decent. But we also have new Ralts here. So 60 HP. This has Teleport, similar to Magikarp. Basically the exact same thing, just called something differently. But colorless energy and its attack cost. And then we also have the new Kirlia with Slap, does 20 damage. And it has colorless energy and its attack cost, 80 HP as well. So new versions of Kirlia and Ralts to go along with Gallade. I don't remember off the top of my head what the other 2 versions of these cards look like, so I'll have to see, but I don't think the HP is any different. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, we do have these other options at least to run now. And then we have a Togepi, so yes, Togepi means that we are getting Togekiss. We already knew that because Cynthia buffs Togekiss, so here's the Togepi card. Nothing really to look at here. We are weak to metal types, so we got to keep that in mind. Psychic, 50 HP. Let's go down and we'll take a look at its evolved forms here. So this is Togetik. So yes, again, we can attack on curve, which is nice. 1 energy and an attack cost, 40 damage. And then now we're gonna take a look at the big guy here, Togekiss. And this card is actually kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if this will see play, but again, Sabrina's effect does buff Togekiss by 50 damage its attack. So let's read this here. Stage 2 Pokemon, Psychic type, 140 HP, weak to metal type, and retreat cost of 1. So 140 for a stage 2 Pokemon isn't like really that great, if I'm being honest with you, but it's not terrible. But it's got the attack here, Overdrive Smash, 2 Psychic Energies, does 60 damage. And then during your next turn, if this Pokemon's Overdrive Smash attack does 60 more damage. That's crazy. Okay, but one thing that we have to keep in mind here is that for 2 energies, yes, we could do 120. Yes, with Cynthia, that is 170 HP, but this is on a stage 2 Pokemon that has to live at least 2 turns to get these attacks off. To be honest with you, does it really matter? Like 160 plus 120 is enough. That's 180. That's enough to KO basically anything in the game. Now, we could use Cynthia on our first attack here with Overdrive Smash, doing, what would it be, 111 damage? Or we could do 170 damage, which is pretty crazy as well. So I don't think Togekiss is necessarily bad. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is that if this thing moves out of the active spot, or if it's forced out of the active spot with something like a Cyrus or a Sabrina card, then that effect gets wiped out. So if we attack with Overdrive Smash and then our opponent just takes the hit and they go, you know what, I have a Sabrina card in my hand, I'm going to force you out of the active spot. It doesn't even matter, I just don't want to take a massive Overdrive Smash. Then they can do that, and now basically this effect gets wiped out and we have to kind of reset it. So we have to keep that in mind. This card does get kind of walled by Sabrina or Cyrus or any kind of a gust effect. It also has 140 HP, so it's going to get one hit KO'd in the mid to late game by quite a bit of cards, even with Giant Cape. So we got to keep that in mind. It has really, really interesting potential. I'm not going to lie. It has really interesting potential. But overall, I don't know. It could be ridiculous, but it also could be a little bit too awkward and too slow for it to really work. But anyway, that's all we're going to say about here. We are at almost 30 minutes for this video. What is going on? I need to talk way faster. Okay, so next up, let's go. What are we looking at? We're going to take a look at Infernape EX. So the other starting Pokemon being Empoleon and Torterra EX have not been leaked yet, but this is Infernape EX, Stage 2, Fire-type Pokemon. Weak to Water, has a free retreat cost, 170 HP. We do Flare Blitz, 140 for 2 Fire, discard all energy from this Pokemon. Some people have really been high on Infernape. They think this card is really good. I don't actually think it's that good in my opinion. Yes, we have a free retreat cost, and that is nice, but however, we can't retreat after we attack. So yes, if we attack with Infernape, we're doing 140. 140 is an awkward number. That's really not enough to one-hit KO most Pokemon in the game, and then we're kind of a sitting duck and we have 0 energy attached to Infernape. Yes, if we do survive, we can retreat out for free, so that is something to keep in mind, but overall, I think 140 on a Stage 2 Pokemon just isn't that great. We have Charizard. Charizard sometimes can do, 180 2 turns in a row on turn 4. So I don't know. Infernape isn't bad. It just seems a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. I could be wrong. Again, we don't have all of the cards to go with it. There could be some really interesting interactions and support cards for the fire type that go well with Infernape. But for right now, with the current package that we have with like Moltres and stuff like that, I just don't think Infernape's really that worth running. Again, we have to run 6 cards in our deck to play Infernape, or we would typically, right? You're going to run 2 copies of each copy of, its evolution line. So I don't know. The upside here, it's a consistent card. It's a decent card, but I think we would rather play something with a high upside. Mewtwo, literally a basic Pokemon with Gardevoir, does more damage. I don't know. It's just interesting to me. 170 is interesting. Like, we are living most hits from stuff, but again, we're weak to water, so unless we have a Giant Cape attached, Palkia EX is going to absolutely just one-shot us. So, I don't know. Infernape, it's not bad. It's interesting for sure. Free Retreat is just always really good, but typically it's better on more early-game Pokemon. Infernape, I don't know. It's okay, in my opinion. Now, we are getting, I think, a new Magnemite and a reprint of Magneton. This is the same one right here, Volt Charge, that allows you to accelerate energies to itself, even while it's on its bench. So it's a really good card. But we are getting a Magnezone, and as we saw, this works with Volkner. So basically, if you remember what Volkner does, we can attach 2 electric energies from our discard pile to this Pokemon. Pretty cool, but it's 140 HP, Stage 2, weak to fighting, retreat cost of 2, and we have Thunder Blast for 1 lightning and 2 colorless energies, which is interesting to note. We do 110 damage, and then you discard an energy from this Pokemon. So 110 and 140, again, it's a little bit underwhelming. It could be fairly consistent. I don't know. Again, not a card that I'm necessarily super high on. However, one thing that we can note is that this is a way to get electric type energies in our discard pile. So Magneton, you accelerate energies to yourself, and then eventually you could evolve into Magnezone. You could just attack with it, and then, maybe once or twice we attack with it, and then we get some energies in our discard pile, which we're allowed to, or basically is going to allow us to accelerate those energies to either our Luxray or another Magnezone with Volkner. I don't know. I don't think this card is exceptionally strong. I think it's pretty consistent, again, because we do have Magneton, which can easily get 3 energies attached to it. But 110, I don't know. Are we really KOing much in the game with 110 damage? And are we really living a lot of attacks from things for 140 HP? That's what we kind of have to think about here. Again, 150 is really the sweet spot. A lot of decks do 150 damage. I don't know. Magnezone is Magnezone. I will have to see how good it is, but it feels a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. It would have been really cool to see this as an EX Pokemon. But next, let's take a look at Drifloon. This card got leaked, but unfortunately we don't have Drifbloom, I think is the evolved form of it. We don't know what that card looks like, but we have Drifloon at least, 50 HP, retreat cost of 1, we have Expand, 10 damage during your opponent's next turn. This Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks. Now, I think if we evolve, I don't think that really does anything. Well, obviously, we're not going to evolve in between turns, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, here it is. I don't know what to talk about with that card. We don't have the evolution of it yet, so there it is. But okay, now let me take a drink here because I've been talking for like 35 minutes and I haven't barely taken a breath, and I also am really thirsty. So give me 1 sec. Wow. Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. Do you guys actually? It's crazy you guys watch these videos, man. I don't even know what's going on. Okay, let's take a look at what I believe to be one of the more interesting cards in these leaks here, and this is Manaphy. Manaphy is a basic 50 HP water type Pokemon, 1 energy in its attack cost, Ocean Gift. Choose 2 of your benched Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, take 1 water energy from your energy zone and attach it to that Pokemon. So yeah, similar to Dialga, this is not a Pokemon type specifically. Basically, we pick any one of our 2 bench Pokemon, and we can attach 1 water energy to both of them. This is extremely good. It doesn't do any damage, but this card is really, really, really good. Basically, we're going to trade 1 energy for 2 energies. However, they're kind of split amongst 2 different bench Pokemon. However, Vaporeon does exist. So I think this card, again, going to be really good in Vaporeon decks. A lot of really great early water type acceleration. We only have 50 HP, so the likelihood of us living more than 1 or 2 turns is very, very slim with Manaphy, even though we do have Giant Cape. So it's interesting, like if Manaphy's able to live for like 2 turns and we get 2 Ocean Gifts off, that's phenomenal, especially in the mid to late game if we evolve into Vaporeon. That's basically, it basically makes it so that, we can pile all the energies that we accelerate onto 1 single Pokemon. Again, off the top of my head, I'm thinking like Manaphy, Vaporeon, Palkia. This could be actually a pretty decently effective way for us to pile like 10 energies on a Palkia when you combine it with Misty's, and then we could potentially attack back to back with Palkia EX for that 150 damage attack, even though we're discarding the energies. So we got to keep that in mind. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, again, we get KO'd very easily, only 50 HP, and it's not doing any damage, but in decks that have big payoffs, again, Palkia is the one thing I'm looking at here. This card is exceptionally pretty strong, but we'll have to see how aggressive the format is. As we will see in just a few minutes, there are some incredible aggro cards that we're going to take a look at that Manaphy doesn't necessarily like very much, but this effect, extraordinarily strong. It's just good in a lot of different water type scenarios. The fact that we have even more water type energy acceleration on top of Misty's and the flexibility of Vaporeon means that we're going to be able to create some really, really interesting and powerful water type decks, which we already kind of knew, but yeah. So here's the thing, we have a new Porygon. It's just a very basic Porygon here. It does 20 damage, 60 HP, retreat cost of 1, but we also have a Porygon 2 because we have the full line here. This is 80 HP. Again, we can attack on curve. We can sharpen for 30 HP, or 30 damage rather, 1 energy and its attack cost. And this all leads to our new holographic card here, Porygon Z, which yes, is a Sinnoh Generation 4 Pokemon. Porygon Z is extraordinarily interesting. This might be one of the most interesting cards that we have ever seen in Pokemon TCG Pocket. 140 HP, Stage 2 Pokemon, colorless, 3 energies in its attack cost, and we have Buggy Beam, 80 damage, and you change the type of the next energy that will be generated from your opponent's energy zone. To one of the following random energies, which is any one of the any energies in the game. So I don't even know what to talk about with this card. So here's the thing. On paper, this seems extremely annoying, and it could literally just win you games outright. But you got to also think that most Pokemon in the game have at least 1 colorless energy in their attack cost. So that's something to keep in mind. But also, like, Porygon Z won't be able to even attack until at your 3rd turn at the very earliest, which means that our opponent is going to get like 2 or 3 turns of using whatever energy they want to use before we're able to attack with Buggy Beam. So there are scenarios where this card could be extremely good. Overall, I think it's a little bit niche. The payoff and the damage output and the amount of HP you have is just a little bit too low for a Stage 2 Pokemon. It's just a little bit too awkward, but it does technically work with things like Manaphy. It does work with Dialga. We can accelerate energies to this Pokemon, so we got to keep that in mind as well. But this is an extraordinarily hilarious Pokemon card that people will build funny decks with. They're going to be meme decks. They're probably not going to be meta, but we got to keep that in mind. Porygon Z, one of the more interesting cards that I've seen here leaked, but will it be good? I don't know. I don't think so. We'll have to see. This is the normal version of Lucario, the fighting coach Lucario that we saw the full art version of in the previous video. It's going to be just a normal holographic card as well. Really nice art. I like it. We've already talked about that card in the previous video, so not going to spend too much time on it. And we have Murkrow. So again, in the last video, we did see, what was it? Honchkrow. So this is Murkrow. It is what it is. 20, we can peck. We can attack on curve. Not terrible, 60 HP, but yeah, there it is. In fact, if we go up, I actually do want to confirm something that I didn't talk about yet. This is the new Honchkrow, so we thought that this attack that did 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, at least I did, I thought that there was at least a chance that the attack cost on that was only 1 energy. It's not, it's 2. So unfortunately, Honchkrow isn't going to be one of the strongest cards in the game. It's going to be a pretty average card. Just wanted to let you guys know that, because in the previous video, we didn't know that information, so we were only speculating. Okay, so now we're going to get into these. There's a couple of these cards that to me are absolutely toxic. They're one of the most insane things that I've ever seen in Pocket. The first one here is going to be Rotom. Basic electric type Pokemon, 70 HP, and we have Assault Laser. By the way, retreat cost of 1, weak to fighting. We have Assault Laser, colorless energy, and this thing's attack cost. And this might be a holographic, it might not be. This is the full art version of it. Assault Laser does 20 damage for 1 colorless energy, right? Nothing too special. However, if we have a Pokemon tool card attached to this Pokemon, we do 30 more damage. 30 more damage. So 50 damage on a basic Pokemon for 1 colorless attack cost. Yes, again, we need a Pokemon tool card attached, but there are 6 different copies of Pokemon tool cards that we could potentially be running in our deck. That might not seem like a big deal, but again, this is an electric type Pokemon. I think we're probably meant to be playing this with Pachirisu, which again gets buffed by Pokemon tool cards that are attached to it. Rotom also has 70 HP. So for example, Farfetch'd is a colorless basic Pokemon that has 60 HP and does 40 damage. So now we have 70 HP and we do 50 damage plus like Giant Cape. Now we are at 90 HP and we're able to do 50 damage on our first turn. All I'm saying is that yes, we have the ability to attack on our first turn, but we can run up to 6 tool cards in our deck. And that's going to make Pokemon like this extremely a lot more consistent than you might think. So the math is going to just kind of work out on this, and it's colorless energy and it's attack cost, so you can technically run Rotom in anything in the deck. I hope you guys are going to enjoy taking 50 damage on your first turn all the time, because it's going to happen very consistently. That is absolutely crazy. This card is crazy, and you know what? I thought that this card was phenomenal until I scrolled down a little bit, and we're going to skip down a little bit to this low-res Skarmory card. This is one of the promo ones. We haven't gotten into these yet. But this is an 80 HP basic Pokemon. For 1 metal energy, it does metal arms. Again, 20 damage, but 30 more if you have a tool card attached to it. So not only do we have 1 of these cards, we have 2 of them. That's 80 HP. So yes, literally we could play Skarmory on our first turn, attack for 50 damage, and then we can attach Giant Cape to it and have a basic 100 HP Pokemon that can attack on its first turn for 50 damage. What is going on here? One of the best cards in Pokemon Pocket right now, by the way, was Primeape, and it does 50 damage as a stage 1 Pokemon for 1 fighting energy. So now we have 2 basically Pokemon that can do that damage as basic Pokemon. Yeah, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know really. I don't even know what I want to say about that. But let's go back to Rotom. So yeah, like I said, this card is what is going on here? Nothing. Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe right now in this new format. Aggro cards. I don't know. I wonder if am I overhyping 50 damage on turn 1? I hope I'm not, because it seems extremely strong. I think it is really strong. That's my opinion. But Rotom, it's meant to be played with Pachirisu. Pachirisu, again, does more damage if you have a tool card attached to it. It's also an electric type Pokemon, also a basic Pokemon. So I think Pikachu / Pachirisu / Rotom decks are going to be not only extremely fast paced, but extremely consistent. This basically gives us multiple options to attack on our first turn for consistent damage, but also 4 different really strong attacking options on our second turn, especially for going second. So I think a deck just like that with like 2 Rotom, 2 Pachirisu, 2 Pikachu, maybe even a Zapdos, maybe even a Dedenne, who knows? Maybe another new Pokemon we haven't seen yet, is going to be exponentially extremely strong, especially since we can run maybe 2 Rocky Helmet and like 2 Giant Capes in the deck. And those cards are just providing value in their own right, on top of allowing this Pokemon to do 50 damage on our first turn. So I don't know what's going on, but that card is crazy. We're going to leave it at that. That's my opinion. Comment below what you think of Rotom. Jeez Louise. In the Skarmory card. That card's crazy. Next we have Staraptor. This isn't an EX Pokemon. It's just a full art version. Stage 2 colorless. Single prize Pokemon here. We have Clutch. 80 damage during your opponent's next turn. The defending Pokemon cannot retreat. This is interesting. So I think this card is kind of meant to be played with the Pidgeot single prize card from Genetic Apex, where we can kind of pull something into the active spot or move it out of the active spot, and then we can attack with Clutch here and force them to stay in. again, it could win you particular games. Like, I think that it's a combo card, and there are some scenarios where, you know, Staraptor's going to just trap you in the active spot. There's nothing you can do, and it's going to just take KOs. Unfortunately, I think it's a little bit more complicated to set up. Again, it's a stage 2 Pokemon, only 140 HP, and we have 3 energies in the attack cost. I don't think a card like this will ever be meta unless it gets like a tremendous amount of support somehow. But it is a very interesting card nonetheless, and I do think that the combination of this with the Pidgeot non-EX Pidgeot card from Genetic Apex could be really, really interesting as well. So I do like Staraptor, but I think the reason why something like an Arbok is really good from Genetic Apex is good is because it's easier to attack with. It's easier to set up. And Staraptor, not very easy to set up either. So I don't know. It's an interesting card as well. It could certainly just win games sometimes, but I don't think it's anything extraordinarily strong. Let's go down to Eevee. We get yet another Eevee card. This one here has very interesting art. I actually love it. Quick attack, 10 damage. Flip a coin if heads, does 20 more damage. So here it is, another Eevee. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. I don't even remember what the other 2 Eevees do, but what we're going to talk about next is Cresselia EX. This card is something. Let's go ahead and let's break this down really, really quickly. Psychic type, one of the best types in the entire game. However, one thing to note is that Psychic type Pokemon are the Psychic type decks rather a little bit more consistent because we have something like Mythical Slab, we have Mewtwo, which is a basic Pokemon, we have Gardevoir to accelerate energies to our Psychic type Pokemon, we have Mew EX as well, which is a really great card, Psychic type as well. So here we go, it's Cresselia. I don't know if this is going to come in Space-Time Smackdown. This is part of the leaks, but we see sort of the promo icon on this card, so it could be featured in an event or some sort of a promo pack that we might be getting after the release of Space-Time Smackdown, or maybe it comes alongside it. We'll have to see. Either way, Cresselia EX, basic Psychic type EX Pokemon, 140 HP, Retreat cost of 2, and weak to Dark type. However, it has the Lunar Plumage ability. Whenever you attach a Psychic Energy from your Energy Zone to this Pokemon, you heal 20 damage from this Pokemon. That seems pretty strong. So, I mean, I'm like, okay, that's not bad. But then I remember something. I remember that Gardevoir, which allows us to accelerate an additional energy to our active Psychic Pokemon every turn, reads that basically we're taking an energy from our Energy Zone and attaching it. So yes, that effect does work with Cresselia's Lunar Plumage effect, meaning that effectively, if Gardevoir is in play, we can heal 40 damage every turn from Cresselia EX. I'm like, sure, that's pretty strong. I mean, that's a pretty good effect, 40 HP every turn, healing, not that bad. However, we also see that we get Giant Cape. So now we go from 140 to 160. We are now out of range of getting one hit KO'd by most Pokemon in the format right now. So we could potentially be 160 HP, doing 80 damage every turn, no drawbacks, and healing for 40 to 60 to even 80 damage in a single turn, turn after turn, with Potion and with the Lunar Plumage effect. So this becomes a really effective wall to a lot of the aggressive and even tempo decks in the format that do, you know, sub 100 damage consistently. Pikachu, for example, does 90 damage. This is the example I'm going to do. So let's say that Cresselia EX is fully set up. It's got, you know, Giant Cape. We've got a Gardevoir on the bench. We've got some potions in our hand. Pikachu attacks Cresselia for 90 damage. That brings him down to 70 HP. We go, that's fine. Let's heal 40 by attaching manually and attaching with Gardevoir. That's cool. We're back up to 110. Let me play a potion. Okay, I go back up to 130. All of a sudden, we're living another hit. We're doing 80 damage every turn. So in some matchups, this card is going to be pretty useless because it's just going to get one hit KO'd. In some matchups, it's going to survive literally forever because it can heal every single turn. We also have something like Blue to further reduce the damage that this card takes. So this is extraordinarily interesting. I think that this is going to be a really consistent card that we can play in Mewtwo decks, basically, or even decks on its own right, to basically like never die and just absolutely dominate, you know, particular matchups against other aggro or tempo decks. So yeah, I really like Cresselia. It's really powerful, but again, it's a little bit more situational in some matchups that survivability isn't going to matter if they're able to one-hit KO us, but in the matchups where it does matter, it's going to be exceptionally strong. So Cresselia EX is a lot better than I maybe initially thought on second review here. Just a crazy card in my mind. Yeah, it's better than Lapras. Some people have been comparing it to Lapras. This is not comparable to Lapras whatsoever. This card is much better than Lapras EX. Let's get that just noted. Here's a promo Togepi. Does the same thing as the other one, but it's kind of got cool art. We see a promo Chimchar and Turtwig as well. Now let's take a look at Electivire. So there might be another version of Electivire, but this is the one that's coming in the promo alongside Cresselia. And like I said, there could be an Electivire EX, there could be just another Electivire. One thing to note though is that Electivire is labeled here as a Stage 1 Pokemon, not a Stage 2 Pokemon. So keep that in mind. 120 HP, retreat cost of 3 here, and it's got the exciting Voltage attack. 40 damage. If this Pokemon has at least 2 more energy attached, this attack does 80 more damage. So that is 120 for 4 energies. However, like I said, we can use Volkner to accelerate energies from our discard pile to Electivire, making it a little bit easier to get 4 energies on this thing. Stage 1 Pokemon can do 120 damage. That is pretty substantial. Now we only have 120 HP, so it's kind of a one-hit wonder, and we can't really retreat out. So I think this card is fine. Again, I think the combination of Magnezone, Volkner, and Electivire, I think they could all package together to be a pretty decent single prize archetype. We'll have to see how it all kind of flows together and how it all works when we kind of build the deck list with all these cards. But either way, very interesting for sure. I'm not going to spend, again, too much time about it, but again, it works with Volkner, works with Magnezone. So it's an interesting card nonetheless. Stage 1, 120 HP doing 120 damage is not bad, even though it's a little bit more situational and effective in the late game. Okay. So basically one of the last new Pokemon we're going to take a look at here is Misdreavous. Now, one thing that's important to note is that Misdreavous here is a Psychic type Pokemon because it's a Ghost type Pokemon in the game, similar to Gengar, but Mismagius, which is the evolved form of this card, hasn't been announced yet. So this is a basic Pokemon that goes with Mismagius. So it reads, and it's another promo, but this has the Confuse Ray attack. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. Now, I read this initially and I go, we don't have confusion in Pocket. This is the first time we're seeing this. So yes, I had to go and check, but yeah, this is the first time that we're seeing the confusion status effect being added to Pokemon TCG Pocket. We don't know exactly how it's going to work. I believe the way it works in the official card game is similar to, I guess, like Sleep in how we have with Pocket right now, where if a Pokemon becomes confused and it's in the active spot, it flips a coin, and if heads, it does damage to itself. It could be 10 or 20 damage. I believe it's probably 10 damage. It does damage to itself instead of missing its turn. So it's basically kind of like Better Sleep, basically, but I could be wrong about that, and I think maybe it goes away, or maybe it's turn after turn until they flip heads. So I don't exactly remember, but yes, we get a new status condition with Misdreavous. That is really interesting in its own right. However, what we can probably assume here is that we're going to be getting a Mismagius. It could be an EX, could be a non-EX Pokemon, and it will also probably have something to do with confusion. So let's keep that in mind. Just kind of a glimpse to what we could be getting here with Mismagius. So we'll have to see. I mean, this video is so long that I wouldn't even be surprised if the rest of the expansion got leaked in the process of me recording this video. I apologize. Some of you guys like these videos, some of you don't. I don't know. Maybe I'll put timestamps. I'll be nice and put timestamps so you guys can, jump around however you would like instead of listening to me blabble back and forth. But here we go. Lastly is Piplup. This is just a full art version of Piplup, the same one that we saw before. Very, very cool. Again, we see BUNNEARY here in the background, though. That's the one thing to take note of this. So we will be getting the BUNNEARY line and Lopunny, I think it's the evolved version of it, which again is a stage 4 Pokemon, so that does make sense. Could be an EX, Lopunny, we don't know, or BUNNEARY, I don't know. We'll see, but that is it. That's all the cards. I believe we've covered everything. Let me double check here. Did we miss anything here in the video? We've been talking for almost an hour, so we probably should wrap it up. Yeah, that's gonna do it. By the way, let's confirm Pachirisu here, 120 HP, retreat cost of 1. That I guess that wasn't confirmed before, but that is certainly the case. So yeah. That's going to be it, guys. We're going to wrap up the video there. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. A long one today. I might pass out. I've been talking for so long. No, I'm kidding. I love it. I'm just so excited for Space-Time Smackdown. These cards are crazy. They're a lot stronger than I actually thought they would be, in my opinion. Again, we'll have to see. This is only about half or less than half of the expansion, so maybe new cards will get leaked in the next couple days, but either way, the full set releases in a couple days, so we'll be able to see exactly how everything works out then. And yeah, you got to stay tuned because we're going to be building a ton of different decks. We're going to be analyzing all of the best decks in this new format, talking about how they interact, talking about the metagame, talking about the best decks that you should be playing, all the matchups, everything that we do here on the channel, tier lists, rankings, everything, meta reports, all of it. It's coming. I'm super, super excited. We're going to have a great time. And yeah, I can't wait. So like the video and subscribe. Stay tuned for more future videos coming and join the Discord server. Link will be down in the description below for the Discord server. And please, guys, comment. I know I talked for so long. You guys are probably going to hate it. Some of you will, at least. I always get flamed in the comments you know, sometimes just because I talk so much. But you know what? Yeah, that's what we do. We talk about cards, and I'm excited, so I have a lot to talk about. But yeah, comment below what you think of the cards. Which card here surprised you? Which card do you think is going to be really good? You know, what interactions do you think is going to be, you know, something that could be fun or could be really strong? Definitely just comment below. I'd love to hear your guys, your thoughts, and you know, I love the interaction. So yeah, anyway, guys, let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. And yeah, later.